Hey guys, and happy Fandom Friday! This week we're going to be talking about one of my favorite book series. We're going back into some book descriptions, and I will warn there are going to be a few spoilers. Hopefully it won't be too bad, because you obviously want to read to find some of the things. But when you're working with a series, there's going to be a few things that have to make sense so you can work on the next book. I'll be right back. Okay guys, so I want to talk to you about one of my favorite YA series, which was actually translated from German, and that is the Kerstin Gier Ruby Red series. I'm not sure the entire trilogy has a name, but it's a set of 3 books about a girl who has the power to go through time. And this is one that I actually picked up at our local library purely because of the cover art, which is amazing. And sorry about the glare, these are of course plastic covered from the library, and they're just so pretty. So I picked these up and was immediately enthralled. The first book is called Ruby Red. It begins our story with a 16-year-old girl who thought her cousin had inherited this special gene. Of course, she knew her family had a secret. She wasn't really allowed to know about it because she wasn't involved. And here to find out, she actually is the one that travels through time, not her cousin. And she actually doesn't know anything about it. So the first trip through time, she's in her own street and suddenly she's somewhere in the 1920s, I believe it is. And she's just like, wait, what just happened? And she's like, no, this is not supposed to be me. This is supposed to be her. So her name is Gwen Shepherd, and she is called the Ruby. There's a series of 12 time travelers in this book series, where she is the most recent and the last of this one. So she is known as the Ruby. Each time traveler has their own stone, their own alchemical sign, their own animal, and their own tree. So there's a whole series of things where this all gets interconnected. And so the secret is being guarded by a secret society called the Guardians, who are guarding the mystery. And it all centers around a mysterious count deep in the 1800s who's trying to protect the world and find this mystery, because if you fill the time travel device with the correct ingredients from all the time travelers, yes, you do have to put blood in the time travel machine, so it's a little weird. But if you collect all 12, it reveals a secret that's supposed to help mankind, or so the Guardians are told. And so this first book is really her introduction to her world and what is going on and what she has to achieve. You meet there's always a female traveler and a male traveler, and they're from separate family lines. So he is one family member and all the males in his family get it, and she is the female, it's all in her line. So she gets it from her grandmother, who gets it from her grandmother, and her grandmother's grandmother was the last time traveler before her, or so she thinks. And slowly as you get through this book, you realize the 2 time travelers that happened before Gwen and Gideon, who is the male counterpart, stole the time travel machine, and they're not sure why. And basically the Guardians are setting it up as, well, they were selfish or they were crazy and they didn't know what they were doing. And she's like, wait, but why? But they won't tell her, because apparently there's a whole bunch of different writings that they have stored up over the centuries since the very first time traveler. And it has warnings against letting the Ruby know too much. So you never know the names of the time travelers until they actually show symptoms. But there's things like the Ruby will, or, you should beware of, and those kind of mysterious things. So you never really know anything. So it's a really good mystery story. And this is just the first one. It's a really cute just introduction. Let me read you the thing that's in the leaflet cover because it's just fun. So 16-year-old Gwen lives with her extended family and rather eccentric family in an exclusive London neighborhood. In spite of her ancestors' peculiar history, she had had a relatively normal life so far. The time-traveling gene that runs like a secret thread through the female half of the family is supposed to have skipped over Gwen, so she hadn't been introduced to the mysteries, and can spend her time hanging out with her best friend Leslie, watching movies and talking about boys. It comes as an unwelcome surprise then when she starts taking sudden, uncontrolled leaps into the past. She is totally unprepared for time travel, not to mention all that comes with it. Fancy clothes, archaic manners, a mysterious secret society, and Gideon, her time-traveling counterpart. He's obnoxious, a know-it-all, and possibly the best-looking guy she's seen in centuries. And yes, this is YA-lit, and it's not a romance novel, but it is definitely written for teenage girls. So the next one in the series is called Sapphire Blue, and this is actually the one I'm working on right now. And this is the second installment. She's now learned a few things, and because they are keeping her in the dark, it's actually pushing her to figure things out for herself. So she's actually having to be kind of sneaky about it, because basically to prevent the uncontrolled jumps in time, she has to go and what's called elapse, so go back in time for a certain period of time to get it out of her system so that she doesn't have the uncontrolled ones. So she's kind of tricking them to send her back at certain periods of time so she can go visit with her grandfather, who has since died, but was a member of the secret society way back. So she's going to go to him and ask him for help to figure out what is going on, because it doesn't make any sense. At the same time, her grandfather had dealt with the two time travelers who had stolen the last time traveling machine. And there are only two so far that they know of. So we're trying to figure out, why would they have stolen? Why are they trying to prevent the Guardians from completing their mission of collecting all of the samples from every time traveler? What is the hiccup? And through all of this, because you are kind of weaving in and out of timelines, things happen where you don't know the full story yet. So for example, there's a point where Gideon, the male counterpart, gets hit in the head, and he swears it's her because he saw her. But she goes, I didn't do it. I have no idea what you're talking about. And so you don't get to straighten out these timelines until you get to the third book, where they show them doing things that lead to the outcomes that you see in this book, which just are confusing as all crap. But it is really intriguing, because as you read through it, you're like, please tell me they explain it. And they do. They do, like, unravel all of these spirals that you get into this giant knot of this book. But it is really cool, because you're trying to figure out, does Gideon really like her? What is going on? Who is this Count? Why does he seem to have such control over everybody? You know, what's going on with Leslie, her best friend, and her Gideon's brother is in this too, and so there's all kinds of little subplots. Now, one of the secrets of the Ruby, which isn't spoiling too much, is the Ruby has a special power. So they knew beforehand that this time traveler would have a secret power, but none of them seem to realize she has it because she doesn't talk about it. She can talk to ghosts. She's the only one that can see them, and the only one that can talk to them. So sometimes she just seems to be talking to nothing from the outside perspective, but you can hear the conversations she's having. So, for example, there is a ghost in her school that it was his father's house in the 1800s. And so his name is James, and she talks to him at length, and everyone thinks she's crazy, but here she's talking to someone who was in the time period she's heading to, and he can help her figure out all the manners and the customs and all the other things. Meanwhile, because he doesn't remember dying, he thinks he's just having a fever dream the entire time. She has a demon gargoyle ghost, whose name is unpronounceable, I'm sorry. It's Exmarius or something. It's one of those ones where it doesn't translate in my head out loud. And so he can go around and sort of spy for her and help her figure out what's going on when she's not there, which is super cool. Now the last one is Emerald Green, and so this is where we hit the climax of the story, and I'm not going to reveal too much. Basically what happens is she goes to this giant ball because they're trying to figure out who has been trying to get them the entire time, and they think it's the two time travelers before them who are trying to close the circle for themselves, and closing the circle is how they reveal the secret. So they're thinking it's Lucy and, So they're thinking it's the two time travelers before them, but there's also other agents. So in this period, the Count has made some enemies called the Alliance who are trying to get him, and so therefore are trying to stop, Gideon and Gwen, and there's a whole bunch of other, vines going through everything, so it's super, super cool. And you're trying to figure out, what did the Count do to irritate these people to this extent? And there's actually... It's super cool between the chapters. Here, let me find it. between the chapters, they have different sections. So they have sections of the annuals from the Guardians. They have explanations. So to help you resolve some of these mysteries in the actual book in front of each chapter, they have sections from the annuals of the Guardians. Apparently the Guardians have kept track of different events all through the history, so you can see what happened on certain days, usually something that has to do with the plot. There's a whole bunch of quotes. There's actually an entire sections of a paper translated by one of the Guardians of what the Count had done in his earlier life that might lead someone to not like him. And the other thing is it has, I don't know if you can see this, it has explanations for each of the 12 time travelers. So it talks about the very first time traveler is Lancelot de Villiers, who was born in 1560, and it goes down and explains everything for each one. So then you slowly sort of unravel this mystery, and you get to the very end, and they have to sort of figure out how to solve this and like finish it properly. And of course, there's a whole bunch of characters all in between. Her cousin is now super mad that she's been training for this her entire life and is getting nowhere. So she gets super jealous and does a few stupid things that teenage girls will do. Gideon and Gwen are sort of dancing around each other because they both really like each other, but they also both know they can't trust each other because they don't know what one will have done in the past or in the future in the past. Verb tenses are so much fun in this book. Her best friend just is trying to help her. Her mother has a secret, and I will not tell you what it is because that one threw me for a loop when I read it the first time. Her mother has a major secret that reveals why Gwen's birthday was messed up, because basically every time traveler's birthday was predicted at certain points. So it goes, the Ruby will be born, on this day in this year. But somehow Gwen's birthday was moved a few hours for some unknown reason. Her mother at first is saying it's because she wanted to keep her safe and let her have a normal childhood, because obviously the Guardians have taken her cousin Charlotte and Gideon and have been training them all this time in manners and violin lessons and fencing lessons, all this thing they would need when they go into the past. So Gwen's been able to have a normal life till this point. And so her mother's claiming that's why she tricked the midwife into changing her birthday so that they wouldn't know that she was born on the right day. But there seems to be something more, and Gwen can even sense it, that her mom's not talking to her. And so there's like secrets all around her that she has to figure out. Alrighty guys, so that is my review of the Ruby Red trilogy. If you love YA Lit, especially of the sort of girly kind, this goes along really well with like the Alana series that I did, and I'm going to be doing several other ones of my favorite book series that are just so worth reading. So if you haven't read it, find it at your local library. It was originally written in German, so some of the translations are a little funky. I've been noticing a few things rereading it now that I'm like, wait, that's not how you say that in English, but it would be a direct translation if you were translating from German to English. Spoiler warning, there is a little bit of language. Yes, I know, Captain America. There's a few bad words, so depending on the age group of who you're reading it to, it's up to parental discretion. There's not a whole lot sexually about in this book. There is a lot of kissing, but they don't really do anything else, so it's kind of clean that way. There's just a lot of ish flying around, as one of my favorite podcasters talks about. So that is my book series for this week. I hope you guys super enjoy it. Make sure to read it. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all the things. And I will see you guys next Fandom Friday. Bye!